All right, and we are back and live. We're back on the road here. All right, gang. Wanted to hop on a little podcast, soapbox. Back on the road. It's actually the morning before a level 1 seminar, which is pretty cool. So I'm really happy to get back on the grind a little bit. It's been a while, and it's nice to see some semblance of normal coming back. So it's where I'm at. But some good feedback on previous episodes, and hopefully you're finding some value in this stuff. I know every time as we go through this, I always question, man, I hope someone's finding value in this stuff. But I'm enjoying it, so I'm going to keep it going. So here we are. I want to dive on. I actually got an email from someone at a seminar a while back, and it was asking me a bunch of questions. And it was interesting because I thought it was really a well-written email, well-written questions, and I was chatting with a few other people in the CrossFit space that are well-versed in it, and it became clear that this individual really does understand pretty much everything they need to understand from the basic methodology of CrossFit, but the one sort of misunderstanding is actually how their questions are answered by what they're doing if implemented correctly. So I want to dive into those 5 questions. And because I do think a lot of people ask these questions. For some people, they don't care, right? What I mean by that is some people just want to get a good workout and they trust or believe in whatever they're doing is the best, as opposed to others that might actually ask some questions about it. But I do think at some level, people will always wonder about certain types of things. And so I do think it's good to, if you are a coach or someone in a position of influence, to know the answers to some of these questions. If you're an athlete, it's good to know them, so you can at least be aware of what's happening and speak to it if other people ask you, because whether you like it or not, as soon as you start working out, you become the workout guy or gal, right? It's such a weird phenomenon in our world where if you work out, you become some level of a resource for people, and it's funny because that's not the way in anything else. Like, oh, you eat food, oh, you're the food guy. No, it's like you have to have some. It's like, oh, like you weigh and measure your food, right? It's like something like that. So it's very strange to me in that world, but whatever. At least people are looking for inspiration, right? But I spent a week just spending some time with the family. And I was like, I could tell that because I wanted to work out every day, it's not a normal thing. It's strange to me. Maybe I'm the strange guy. And like I said, if I've said this before, being fit, wanting to be fit and make that a priority, it puts you in an abnormal category. And I don't know. I wish it didn't for the world, certainly in the place we're at. But let's go start with the first question here. How important is the rotational aspect of functional fitness? I feel like there are tons of back injuries in the general population that often come from twisting motions like shoveling, blah, 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 blah. It's somewhat of a deadlift clean variation, but there's also a big rotational phase in most cases. In my eyes, CrossFit does not really address that motion. So, rotation. So it's a great question. So, and I think it's important to understand is what is the importance of and transferability of. So rotation in from a trunk perspective, from the body perspective, is absolutely happens, right, in life, and whether it's, shoveling, whether it's whatever it might be. So I think that the big important thing to understand here, and because I think that so it dovetails into the next question. So I ask this question because I'm going to have to answer all of these questions at the same time. We do a ton of bilateral movements, deadlift, push, press, cleans, thrusters, but unilateral work does not seem to be addressed as much. I could be missing something, but but how important do you think unilateral work is in a general fitness program? So now, with that said, so you have this concept of unilateral work, concept of rotation, and they're somewhat similar in how the body works. So I think the good way to think about a good CrossFit program is it starts with the 9 fundamental movements that are your squats, your presses, your deadlifts. But the basic guiding tenet is midline stabilization and proper movement, where you're utilizing your abdominals and your erectors to stabilize the midline. And that's important because if you're doing that, now you're working the core musculature. Okay, and from there, we are also loading the body through, those bilateral movements as we dove into the next piece of like whether it's a deadlift, right, where you're resisting flexion of the spine. I mean, you're getting pulled forward, and all your body wants to do is round, you're resisting that. You're going overhead, and all you want to do is lose your midline and overarch your back, but you're resisting that. And if we do that consistently, what we're going to start to do is actually build a buffer, okay? And the buffer is for injury. Now, we don't see in life that much massive amounts of rotation day in and day out. So what you want to think about is, well, what's the program based on? Well, we want to have a program based on functionality, right? So think about in your day, right? You are doing more stuff with two hands, with both feet, so on and so forth. You're explosive, and you're doing some level of, maybe like rotation, but you're not doing anything that's sort of like, you're not overly rotating. Now, some sports maybe, but in life, not really. So from a core perspective of the program, we're probably covering everything we need to. And the more competent we get at these functional movements, and the stronger that we get throughout them, the more that you have the ability to start to buffer outside of that. What I mean by that is universal motor recruitment patterns. The more that you can do, universal, found everywhere, motor recruitment patterns, how our body's wired to move, you start to be able to have competency and proficiency across many other things. Okay, so this is an important piece that we need to learn skills. So I'll take rope climbing, for example, right? Rope climbing, there's a lot of stuff going on, but you're getting into a really big knee tuck. You're bringing your knees up to your elbows. You're utilizing your feet to J-hook, and then you're going to stand back up. Right, there's a lot going on there. I mean, you're essentially doing a pull-up, you're doing a knee to elbow, you're working on your coordination of your feet, and then you're climbing yourself back up the rope. Right, and you're also not necessarily perfectly straight. You're a little rotated, right? The minute we start to get dynamic on the pull-up bar after we develop strict strength, such as a kipping pull-up, we have our kipping bar muscle-ups, kipping ring muscle-ups. Now we're actually getting pretty dynamic through that spine, where we're actually extending and flexing the trunk a little bit. So we're getting beyond just that static spine. The GHD sit-up is another good example, where once we go from the ab mat sit-up to some partial range of motion to full range of motion GHD sit-ups, we're taking that trunk, for example, to this extended spine, neutral spine, flex spine. And I would say that if you want to train the most powerful piece and just train your trunk to be the safest, the GHD sit-up is going to get you there, right? So, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be training some rotational work. So, and addresses this later on as sort of like in our warm-ups and things like that, where like, and post-workout stuff. Rotation is good, and certainly when it comes to throwing. So another question here is, in a daily life, I might consider throwing a functional movement, playing frisbee, playing all that stuff. And then, he goes on to say there's a phrase that's regularly learn and play new sports, but is that enough? Should we incorporate throwing in to reduce shoulder-related injury? And I would even say shoulder injury, but also throwing into some trunk rotation. And I think the answer is absolutely. The intent of regularly playing new sports as sort of world-class fitness in 100 words was that CrossFit was to be the base, but also it was never understood. CrossFit, when it really started, was a training program for sport. And so we've definitely evolved, and I think we need to realize that. We're like, all right, we're going to train professional athletes in the gym, but then they're going to go do their sports-specific stuff when they are on the field, in the court, whatever it might be. So warm-up and post-workout, absolutely. Whether it's throwing, whether it's, whatever it might be there, I think that it's important to understand that putting that into your warm-up, putting rotational work into your warm-up and post-workout stuff is absolutely important. Unilateral work is, we see it in CrossFit, right? We see, and I think this is, like, the longer you do this stuff, you also realize we see it a lot more as you become a better programmer, as you scale a little more, but you're going to see pistols, you're going to see a good amount of dumbbell work is single arm, right? So therefore, you're going to see, in turn, you have the whole thing from your squatting, your pulling, your pressing. You're going to see all of that. Now, we know that it's not the cornerstone of the program, but we absolutely should see it. But it doesn't mean we can't put in some even more sort of lower intensity unilateral work post or pre, such as some RDLs, some things like that. We do Bulgarian split squats, things like that. Absolutely throwing that in. And that's gonna help us out. That's really gonna also dovetail into the rotational piece, because the more unilateral strength that we have will make us better at bilateral as well, but also it will make sure that we can stabilize the trunk and resist twisting. Therefore, we have the ability and strength to hold through that. So we have two thought processes. You have resistance, and you also have sort of compliance to the movement, right? You could say, hey, I'm going to do wood choppers, I'm going to do Russian twists. We don't see that in life as much. But again, we see the GHD sit-up concept. We see doing a single arm sort of deadlift or and movement like that where you're resisting that twist. That's probably going to be more beneficial from rotational strength or resistance from any type of over-rotation from an injury perspective. So yes, absolutely, we're going to see that in there. And now from there, in a similar vein, he writes, we see a ton of linear work, lunging in a straight line, jumping in a straight line, but do we think we should be moving laterally and backwards more? Again, in life, we don't move backwards too often, but but think about the beauty of CrossFit is the short answer is, throw it in there, right? It should be on the fringe. Like there's a workout called Griff where you run backwards. It's like 800 meters forward, 400 meters backwards, right? So this workout's 15 years old. And you don't do it all the time, but I'll do it once in a while. Lateral stuff, absolutely. Again, this probably goes into your warm-ups, maybe even post-workout. But and you could do it in workouts too, like just sort of agility type of things. I look at the CrossFit Games as a top tier expression of this, and it's not how we program our affiliates, but we see lateral work, sprinting work. We see all that certainly like once or twice tested at the most at the games, whether it was some type of sprint, some type of obstacle course, things like that, and that's going to be an expression of your ability to express your fitness. So throw it into those warm-ups. It's definitely fun. I definitely think you need to realize whenever you throw in super high power, explosive type of movements into your workouts, you need to really warm them up. I used to train a lot of kids for strength and conditioning, and if you're going to do lateral stuff, and no matter what explosive start and stop, you need to really warm them up. And the reality is it's really hard to do that within an hour-long class if you're going to spend a 25-minute dynamic warm-up to get the body ready to do explosive stuff. But lateral stuff, you can, just even doing, little things like, you can do death by 10 meters, for a workout, but, it's not lateral, but you are starting and stopping, you're crossing over, you're not just running linearly, you're kind of doing a shuffle step, you're teaching the stop, you're teaching the start. You can incorporate that in there without a doubt, but we have turf at our gyms, and we utilize that stuff, and we throw it in there, so definitely throw it in there. It doesn't become the cornerstone of the program, but it all touches, and it's really all the same concept. The answer is yes. How do we do that? But also keep in mind that the notion of variance means that we don't leave any stone unturned, but the cornerstone of the program is functionality and applicability to real life, and the job of the body is to resist non-optimal positions. We know that the most optimal position is that static midline, and that's why we stick to functional movements to start, and we load them and add speed to them with proficiency, because that has carryover. And you just know that because like this old saying, stronger people are harder to kill, but the more buffer you have, you're not going to get pulled into a poor position. And that's why we know that the fitter you are and the healthier you are, that it decreases your risk for injury, because you're not going to get pulled into poor positions. And that's the power of that. Last question. This is my favorite question. I'm going to read the whole question, okay? So bear with me here. So the goal of CrossFit is to keep workouts short and move people from sick. So the goal, of course, is to keep workouts short and move people from sick end of the continuum to the fit end of the continuum, while forging and fostering health. Health being what you said, work capacity across broad time and modal names across the length of life. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like the more appropriate form of training to extend the quality and quantity of life would be a mix of bodybuilding and low-impact cardio. Remember that. While boring, it promotes building the retention of muscle, which is a good predicator of length and quality of life. It also addresses the cardiovascular health without beating up your joints. CrossFit is way more fun and addresses many other aspects of fitness, but if the goal is really to keep people out of the nursing home, I might take another approach. I really love this question because it highlights that he has an understanding, there's a disconnect. The understanding is everything he understood is CrossFit. He actually explained CrossFit. The disconnect is how to apply it. And I guess we could say relative intensity is misunderstood and scaling to your physical and psychological tolerances. So the purpose of CrossFit is to increase work capacity across broad time and modal domains, fitness, but also we want to increase health across our lifetime. When he says, hey, I would, and I said, what about a mix of bodybuilding and low impact cardio? That is really what CrossFit is, if you think about it, right? And what I mean by that is functional movements, right? And then low impact cardio, but movement. But remember, if we're dealing with keeping people out of the nursing home, it's one thing, but that's not the goal. The goal is not to keep people out of the nursing home. The goal is to keep getting people fitter. So athlete walks in the gym, no matter where they're at their own physical and psychological tolerances, okay? We need to scale the workout to meet them, right? Which means we're going to slow it down. We're going to lower the weight. We might even change the movement a little bit depending on their proficiency, okay? And their speed is going to be relative to where they are today in order for them to garner an adaptation. So no matter where you're at, no matter what training program you're doing, in order to garner an adaptation, you need to stress the system. Now, it doesn't need to be overly stressed, but it just needs to be stressed a little bit. That's how you make change, whether you're bodybuilding, whether you're whatever it might be, okay? And we need to be adhering to that in our gyms. So with that said, just think about, and so bodybuilding, what do we actually do in the gym, right? So if I saw them walk in and they don't have a pull-up, well, I have to do a variation of a pull-up, right? If I physically can't go from beneath the pull-up bar to chin over, well, you're going to be doing some, whether it's a banded pull-up, whether a ring row, an upright row, a bent over row, right? Those are, I guess you could say bodybuilding movements. Absolutely. They're scaled to help you get better at that. But then over time, we want to be able to stress the system. So a pull-up, a multi-joint compound movements, which actually move a larger load a longer distance quickly. But also we understand that coordination piece of moving your body as in a symphony of contractions in harmony with one another and is arguably the most important thing for functionality. And that's the biggest thing, is that if we want to keep people healthy over time and fostering health, we need to make sure that we're also challenging the coordination, accuracy, agility, and balance pieces, learning new skills. That's really where we see the biggest void as our population gets older and more deconditioned. It's easy to condition people, relatively speaking, but we need to teach them new things because it allows them to have that kinesthetic awareness, so they have the balance, so they have the awareness to navigate life. And that's why we don't want to just do a standing bicep curl. That's why we don't, there's nothing wrong with it, but we also want to challenge to maybe do a muscle clean into a strict press, which is a reverse curl into a press bodybuilding movement, just a scaled clean and jerk. But now we're learning how to do this stuff. Now, if the barbell's too much, you can do it with a dumbbell. Or you can do it with one dumbbell. Absolutely. So again, notice how we can scale it down. The understanding of how to scale these movements to our people and to meet where they are today, but also their goals, is very, very important, often misunderstood. So I thought this question was really good. But again, we don't want to just keep people out in the nursing home. We want to have people thrive. In order to do that, we need to garner adaptation through an increased challenging stimulus relative to where you are today. I'm 33, my dad's 63, my brother is 21, and we all can do the same workout. We're just going to scale it to where we are. Now, my dad's been doing CrossFit for 10 years. I might have another 63-year-old that hasn't worked out in 30 years. Now, their workout's going to look a little different, but really what it's going to look like is probably some low-impact cardio and some sort of broken down functional movement that may look more like a bodybuilding movement today than not. Maybe like a push-up, or maybe a ring row, and maybe a run, or a bike, or a row, low impact cardio. So again, when we think about that question's great. I think the mindset's in the right place, but now we just got to keep doing this stuff and diving into and understanding the program. And this is why I think it's really powerful, because when people are like, I don't like CrossFit because I don't want to work I feel like I'm getting pushed too hard, the intensity's too high. I often say it's like, it breaks my heart because I understand there's a misunderstanding and disconnect. Yes, it is a group environment, which means if you don't like the group environment, then it might not be for you, but you can still utilize CrossFit methodology, not in the group environment. And I do that all the time, and you can do that with all the time. And people are like, oh, I love this. Well, you did CrossFit, you just did it in a different setting. And I think it's important for trainers to understand that, and that might be the best bet for some. Doing CrossFit in a group allows intensity to be achieved, which is a hard thing to do. It allows you to push a little harder, which there's a huge value to that, but it's not for everybody, and that's okay. Really great questions from my buddy here. So hopefully I answered them, but again, that was 20 minutes, and hopefully you might get these questions and maybe help you understand the program, or maybe it brings up more questions, but hit me with it. I love talking about this type of stuff. I could do it forever. I appreciate it. Appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Hit me up if you have any questions. Work hard, have fun, be safe, and we'll see you in the next episode.